Well, good morning. 555. This is the video for June 11th. And I started with one title and went to another one, but let me just get into it. Is guilt a self-punishing mechanism? At first, I was going to call this video, "The Demons I've Been Fighting Are Me." Yes, I think we create, through shame, guilt, and fear programming, openings for self-punishing mechanisms. And yes, I think our demons are really part of ourselves. In my own life, this has not been more evident than in my lifelong struggle to accept my own sexuality. I have had conversations with many over the years and have noticed one thing in common. Those who honor their own sexuality do not get STDs. That's sexually transmitted diseases, for those that don't know. While those who have been heavily programmed with negative ideas about sexuality may. I do not think this is an absolute, since there are other psychological factors that may be at work, but I think it is an interesting observation. Listen as I read, then comment on My Favorite Sin, a poem I wrote over 32 years ago while still a fundamentalist Christian. And let me get back and reopen that. Let me find it. Wait a minute, what did I do with it? Oh, here it is. I had moved to other pages. I had it up earlier when I wrote the blurb and everything. Anyway, this is one of the perhaps more difficult videos that I will be doing, but I think it's essential that I do it. I started with a shirt on, actually, and I thought, boy, of all the things to not have a shirt on, this is naked truth that I'm dealing with here. Here's the poem, and again, 32 years ago, February 1982, still very much a fundamentalist Christian. I was commanded by the Lord, and now I must begin, to write a poetic expose about my favorite sin. For years I tried to hide it. I was afraid to let it out. I suffered so from guilt, my faith was held in doubt. I was driven by my lust and cursed the drive called sex. Yet if my inmost thoughts were shown, they'd rate the movie X. I liked to look at pictures. The women turned me on. And in my life of fantasy, I acted out Don Juan. The only real sex I had was with my wife, you see. No pre- or extramarital. I'd lived self-righteously. That may be my great complaint. Somehow I felt cheated. But I called it a virtue and walked around conceited. I couldn't stand the sinners who circulated so. Yet what I felt was envy, yet could not let it show. I used to sneak to places where God could not be found. Before I even entered, I surely looked around. I'd never want to be seen in a theater showing skin, but I had quite perverted thrills once I had gone within. There I could actually visualize my sexual fantasies. I'd switch place with the actors and do whate'er I'd please. The thrill would build to climax, then guilt would knock me down. I'd bow my head between my knees and pity that poor clown. Other times I'd come across some magazines with girls. I'd try real hard not to look, then admire pubic curls. Oh, I made resolutions and strongly set my will. I even sought deliverance, that demon lust I'd kill. Yes, I sought the counsel of mighty men of God, and they would cast the ogre out and beat it with a rod. But always with a vengeance my sin came back, you see, because it wasn't just a demon, it was really me. Some things I have said so far were never really clear. I did not understand it, and I was full of fear. I was afraid that Jesus Christ would cast me out for sure, if I could not overcome my sin and find a lasting cure. But friend, a revelation enlightened me one day. Jesus loved me as I was. He accepted me that way. He had paid the penalty, and with him I had died. Now with my resurrected Lord, I find I'm purified. But even though the debt is paid and I have been made right, God said to let my old man out to face his holy light. Now this has blown my image. My fig leaves fall apart. I'm really not so holy once you see my naked heart. The sanctified may stone me in their self-righteous pride, The light, you see, threatens them. The truth is, they can't hide. For God will light a candle. We all are sinners here. And there is not a righteous man, but do not shed a tear. For there is grace abounding, and grace that covers, and love that covers sin. God wants us to face ourselves, to know what lies within. My favorite sin is now confessed, that I had fought so long. But I won't fight it any more, nor strive against the wrong. Oh, I can hear the arguments, objections will be raised. God's people should not live in sin once by his blood they're saved. And grace is not a license to do things that are bad. We are called to holiness. It seems that you've gone mad. Well, I have taught that theory and tried it in my life. Yet all it ever brought to me was guilt and endless strife. Now I know the freedom of living with the King. Sin can no more drive me. Somehow it's lost its sting. And I'm not saying I don't do the things I did before, but there's no condemnation. That's what grace is for. The Lord, he gives us liberty, protects us through the fire. And it's not him who beats us. It's Satan, that old liar. So if you want to please the Lord, then take a tip from me. Stop trying to reform yourself. Trust him to set you free. And do not be impatient, for growing must take time. Just give your life to Jesus and let him make life rhyme. Again, February 1982, 32 years ago. I've been struggling with this my whole life. There have been times that I would go out and I would burn the pictures that I had been gathering, the magazines that I had. I'd burn them. I'd have bonfires and release it to God and say, God, please help me stop this behavior. Other times I'd put them in a sack and I'd throw them into a river so that they would drown with rocks, so it would sink to the bottom and not float to the top. At least that was my theory. I mean, I've gone through so much stress and so much strain over this issue of dealing with pornography and masturbation and sexual drives and lust, and my libido being very high, and not being able to stop thinking about sex. And the more I would try to stop thinking about it, the more I would think about it. And I mean, it's a vicious cycle over and over and over again. I tried to get rid of my nature. God created me that way, for God's sake. God created me to love the beautiful woman and to believe that there's nothing more beautiful on the planet than a beautiful woman. Nothing. Nothing. Yes, the body of a woman is gorgeous. It thrills me just to see a naked body. Thrills me. All the parts thrill me of a woman's body. Now, I don't feel guilty when I look at pictures of flowers, and I like flowers. Flowers are beautiful. I do spend time looking at flowers, believe it or not. And I look at scenery that's beautiful, and I don't feel guilty about that. And yet, I've been programmed to feel guilty about my own nature, about the way that I was created by God to be. To look at a woman made from the rib of a man, if you want to believe the biblical account of creation, and wow, man, was my comment in the very beginning. Wow, man. We shortened it. We just said woman. But it's wow, man. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She thrills me. Just the sight of her thrills me. The touch, her scent thrills me. We were designed like that. And we've been taught to be ashamed and put it in a box. I've known people throughout my life that were so afraid of their sexuality. Many were wounded. I mean, I remember as a teenager, there was this, I don't even remember her name now. And I don't even remember how I got involved in the conversation. But somehow I learned about this friend who was petrified of sex. She was a teenage girl, petrified of sex. I don't remember, again, how I learned about it. I don't know if she was raped or child molested or what went on in her earlier life. But as a teenager, she just was so afraid of her own sexuality. I've known people in my life. I have friends. I have a friend that worked as a prostitute for several years, and at one point in time, the health department came because one of her Johns, who was a regular, had a very serious sexually transmitted disease. And he named her as one of his partners. And so they tested her and tested her again and tested her again over a period of, I think, at least a few years. She never had a sexually transmitted disease. She said, I've never had a sexually transmitted disease in my life, and I've had lots of unprotected sex. Why? Because she, at an early age, accepted her sexuality as a gift from God. She did not allow the guilt and shame module and programming to be forced upon her. She loved her sexuality, and she said she never made love to any man that she did not feel love for. She did not take shame into the sexual act of making love. And so she was protected. Her immune system was strong enough that it did what it's supposed to do, protect her. Now, I had a friend who was a gay man, and he also, from an early age, from his teenage years, just simply accepted the fact that he was a gay man. He had unprotected sex with men who developed AIDS. He never did. Why? Because the one thing he had in common was that he accepted his sexuality as part of his nature. It was part of who he was. He wasn't at war with himself over his sexuality. Now, I remember listening to a Christian program once of this young lady who was giving her testimony of how important it is to obey God's law. And she said she sinned. She sinned just once, and she got herpes, and she'd be cursed for the rest of her life because of not obeying God's law. You see what I'm saying? She had sex, and she was guilty about it. And so she opened the door to the self-punishing mechanism of a sexually transmitted disease that is supposed to last forever. Now, I don't honestly believe that there's any incurable disease, and there's no disease that lasts forever. Now, some years ago, I was infested with another virus in my mind. Now, bear in mind that for years, since I became an adult, and by the way, I didn't have sex till I got married. And I didn't really masturbate till after I got married. And my wife hated masturbation. She hated pictures of women. And yet, throughout my whole first marriage, there were always pictures of women. I'd get Penthouse or Playboy magazine, and I'd hide them. I'd had to hide them because, and she'd sometimes find them. And I mean, how did she ever think to look there? I mean, I thought I had some really unique hiding places. But she would find them, and she would search and search. Where's Ronnie hiding his pictures? I know he's got his pictures. And sometimes she'd wake me up in the middle of the night, and she'd say, are you touching yourself? So petrified she was of my sexuality and of me touching my own body or getting turned on by pictures of other women. Okay, I'm giving you history. I'm giving you history, my history. But somebody came along after all of this time in the late 20th century, and this was a spiritual man, and we were walking on the beach, and I don't even know how the freaking subject came up, but he said, you know, he says, men that masturbate and look at pictures lose their ability to have sex and to make love to a woman. Their body stops working. Now, my body had never stopped working before when I was with a woman, even though I masturbated and even though I looked at pictures. But he planted a seed in my psyche. He planted a seed. And then I met some people and I read some things online that verified what he was saying. Oh, now, any time that I got into a sexual situation with a woman, I was afraid that I wouldn't work. It still happens today. It still happens today. And I've been trying to unprogram myself all this time and get that damn virus out of my freaking head. Because God made me a sexual being. And all of this other stuff is total bullshit. And yet, the virus works. It causes situational impotence or erectile dysfunction in certain situations when you're with a real, live human being who wants to make love to you and who you want to make love. So I've been afraid of sex. You think I've said no to women just because I wanted to say no? Behind all of that is the subconscious thought is will my body work? Will I get laughed at? Will I be said, like I said, like the first girl that kissed me when I was 17 years old? You're not a man, you're a mouse. Will I be ridiculed because my body doesn't work? It's no wonder I'm afraid to make love. No wonder I'm afraid to get close to somebody. No wonder. No wonder I created that in the most recent opportunity that I had to make love, and my body didn't work. This is all sexual programming. It's all a virus that the human race has been infected with. And in our sexuality, our very life itself, the way we were created to be, has been shamed and guilt-ridden so that we are unable to trust ourselves enough to love truly. So we're always hiding. Well, I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending that I'm somehow holy and righteous and denying the truth about myself. For the first time in my life, I brought a lady into my private world. The first time I've actually been willing to do that and to open up and say, this is my sexual life. This is the substitute I have because I can't really trust making love to a woman anymore. Because I'm relegated now to only looking at pictures and only masturbating. Okay? I've come clean and I'm going to heal. I even at one point in time went through, I think, 4 or 5 hypnotherapy sessions. It didn't work. It didn't work. I was trying to deprogram myself. It didn't work. I'm still trying to deprogram myself. It will work because I'm not going to hide this anymore from anybody. You want to know what Ron does sometimes when he gets turned on and his libido is working? Yes, he looks at pictures, generally soft porn. No, I don't like pictures of bestiality. No, I will not get into child pornography. No, I will not get into rape things. No, I will not get into chains and bondage. No, I will not get into certain things. Do not turn me on. I don't even like anal sex, for God's sake. But in any case, I'm going to be open and clean and tell the truth because I am here to heal, and I am here to encourage you to heal from the wounds that our society has given us. And let me tell you something. Religion is committing spiritual abuse when they degrade and make filthy our own nature, our own sexuality, our own bodies. When they do that, that is spiritual abuse. And it wounds us at the very heart of our being. Sex was intended by God to be something that opens us up to greater spirituality. No wonder when we orgasm, we may cry, oh God, oh God, oh God. Why? Because sex is spiritual. It was designed that way. And we've got to take it out of the box and set ourselves free. Because only by doing that will we become whole. Only by doing that will we be able to heal ourselves and the world that we live in. This is our life force energy. Let's treat it with respect and honor and dignity and get out of the shame and the guilt and the fear that would have been superimposed over it for such a long time. Thank you for listening, and namaste.